Hello there, you train-loving Shedmouthshire hobbits. How are we doing today? We're back in the shed, and today we're going to do some scenic work. Yes, folks, here we are back in the shed. Going to do something a bit different today. I'm going to try and do a bit of a tutorial. Yeah, wish me luck with this. I'm not much of a tutorial kind of guy because I don't know what I'm doing myself half the time. But I'm going to do something today which has been asked a few times now, and I've been putting it off for ages because I don't know what's going to come out of it. And I'm always a little bit frightened of the unknown. But back in November 2024, I started making some rock faces for my double O layout. And they looked a little bit like this kind of thing, that kind of stuff, you know. And I put them on what's it called? That other thing, you know, Instagram. And I got asked a few times if I could do a tutorial on how I made these rock faces. Now, up until a couple of weeks ago, I had never done this before. I'd never done painting, never done static grass and that sort of stuff. So it's a bit of a learning curve, to say the least. But I kind of thought I could come in here today and show you the 4 different ways I've actually made some rock faces. 3 of them are very similar. One of them is a bit different, okay? And what I mean by that is most of them, 3 out of the 4, are made with this stuff. Quite simple blocks of insulating foam in 3 different ways. The 4th way I've made some rock faces is just over on the corner, which I have used clay. So again, I'll show you how I did that one. But we're going to start off 3 out of the 4 using this foam. So that's what we're going to do first of all. We're going to create the rock faces, and then later on we'll try and paint them and make them look respectable, shall we say. Or I think they're respectable. I don't think I did a bad job of it myself. Before we get started though, I will just show you what I have made so far. So the clay work in the far corner is probably my favourite out of the 3. I felt the clay work was a bit more intricate. You get a bit more detail into it, and I really like the way that's actually came out underneath the arches over there. Really brings the whole thing to life, and I'm really pleased with that. The other methods I've used is using I'll show you these ones. This one here is the same thing, insulating foam, and I have cut into that the shapes that I wanted for the rocks, covered it in tissue paper, and then added my static grass and that sort of thing. So if I turn that around, you can see it on the camera slightly better. So I'll show you how I did these ones to start with. Okay, this is quite a large piece of rockery. The second method I have used, now I haven't got the static grass on this yet, but this is straightforward paint onto the foam. Literally paint, base coat, and then add in the rock detail later on. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And the third method, this one ended up being slightly overscaled, to be honest. It was a test piece. It was good practice. This is like a little yeah, if you call it a slate, trying to get a slate effect wall with some grass on the top. And that I started off using foam and again tissue paper. So I'll show you that method. So firstly, before I get going, this is something that I made the rocks really quickly and really easily. Not much thought and effort went into it. It's more a case of experimenting with different things. And this is not, like I say, coming from an experienced modeller's point of view. This is coming from a novice. I am a total and utter novice at this. I have taken so long to make the rocks, partly because the way my brain works is awkward. If I can see a finished product in my head, I can be able to kind of, generally in life, I can work things out and make it happen. If I can't get a vision of it, of how I want it, I really struggle mentally to produce anything. For example, I do lots of artwork. Well, I used to do lots of artwork. Lots of pencil sketches, mainly of motorcycles, which is my huge passion in life, is motorbikes. And I used to draw motorcycle racers and riders. And because I'm so passionate about it, I know all the details of most bikes on the market. I can look at things and draw things out of my head that I know are fairly realistic. When I used to produce artwork, I'd go to the nth degree of a piece of artwork. I'd draw a rider and I draw the leathers and the stitching in the leathers, and I know where it's stitched. I know that sort of thing. So I've got a vision in my head which makes it easier to produce a final thing. Where I've struggled with this is, yes, I made the rock faces, but I didn't really know what I wanted at the end of it. I couldn't envision it in my head how I wanted this stuff to look. Although I couldn't see a finish, I couldn't make the start. I couldn't physically do it. Of recent weeks, having a more direction with the layouts that I want to produce, all of a sudden it kind of slotted into place, and I thought, well, like, I want that there, and I want that there, and this. I've made all these bits of rocks now. Where can I put them? And all of a sudden they found a permanent place on the layout. So now my plans that I wasn't going to scenic this area up here. Today, hopefully in this video, I'm going to scenic it with you. So we're going to work on it together. Okay, so this is making our little embankment. Standard piece of foam and one heck of a huge knife. Now you haven't got to use a machete like this. You can probably use just a pen knife or whatever you've got to hand. And all I'm doing is shaping the rocks into the rough kind of profile that you're after for your own layout. Now this stuff is kind of fragile. Don't go hacking at it too much, but you know, you get the idea. Just create a shape that you're after. So that kind of looks like a bit like an embankment, doesn't it? Just using the knife to run across the foam in long lines. Maybe different angles. Just mind you don't cut yourself. And literally just get hold of the knife and twist it in the foam. I think the nice thing about using a long knife like this is that it creates almost an illusion of layers in the rock face. Then create some more lines. And it really is as easy as that. So take your time with it, have a little play, and create the shapes that you want to create. So you can, if you wanted to have like a little bit of a recess, dig out a whole section. You know, don't be frightened to get in there and create all these really like more natural shapes out of it. You can do it however you like it, but it's just such a simple and easy method. You can create all sorts of little shapes. Just bear in mind, if you use short strips like this and then join them together, when you come to paint them, that can make it quite awkward getting the colours to match. And that's a problem I've certainly found myself, and I'll show you that later on. Okay, so from this point, as you can see, we've got our rock face shape. And really, from there on in, there are three ways that you can go from here, or three ways that I've gone from here. The first one was creating these long stretches of foam which run alongside my passing loop, shall we say. And literally going from this to this was a case of simply painting it black and then adding the extra colours in. This second method, which was used for my larger corner piece, was from here, was to cover it with white roll. You know, you can get the big blue roll. I actually had a white roll, same stuff, just different colour. Not that that matters, because you're going to paint it black anyway. And I'll show you what I did with that. And the reason why I did it was because I wanted to see if by adding the tissue paper it created a harder surface which gave it a bit more strength, because it's quite a powdery substance, this foam. And secondly, to see if it absorbed the paint any less, because obviously when you're painting straight onto a foam, to a degree it wants to absorb the paint. And I was thinking if I put some blue roll over it, or in my case white roll, would it take up a bit less paint. But so like I say, paint straight onto that, or use this method, which is what I use for the rocks, okay, in the far corner of my layout. So taking a mixture of PVA glue and water, this is probably mostly PVA. It is probably in a ratio of around about I'd say 60 or 70% PVA, and then 40 to 30% water. But imagine this is your blue roll or white roll, whatever you're going to use. I'm going to use a bit of kitchen roll, so it might not actually work today. But what you don't want to do is use anything that's going to lose all this detail that you just put in with the knife. So hence I used a white roll, because it's quite a thin paper, and literally just brush on your PVA and water mix. And what you find is the pattern comes through the paper. It might not work with this because it is actually, like I say, kitchen roll, but it's really just to give you an idea of what I did. There we go. I would say try not to use anything with a pattern on it, otherwise you'll find the pattern might come through on your rock faces, and you really wouldn't want that, especially if it's pictures like of an Andrex puppy or something. You wouldn't want a dog shaped pattern across your rock faces. But already you can see that adding that water, even to tissue paper that is quite thick, the details that you've created with the knife previously are now starting to show through. Don't be frightened to push it into all the little nooks and crannies with your brush. Then when it all dries off later on, this will be the rock hard surface on which to paint. I did actually find, with the pieces that I've already done, that the paint didn't soak in too much. So it probably did save me a little bit of paint, but it's not the end of the world. You don't have to do this, it just gives you a different effect. Okay, so leave that to dry, and that'll end up looking something like this. So once that's dry, and you give it some paint, that's the kind of texture that you end up with. What you do find is you do seem to see these little ridges the paper creates vertically and horizontally, which is quite a nice little effect. You might like it, you might not, but obviously with using this method of the paper, it does naturally create these little wavy lines, and as you can hear, it's quite a solid thing. Okay, so that's covered painting straight onto the foam and painting onto the paper. Okay, the third method I used with the foam to create this piece was simply taking a piece of foam. I didn't have to put in those ridges of the knife on this one, literally just a flat piece of foam. Again, taking some white roll, or in this case tissue paper, tearing up little strips, and then dunking the strips in my same PVA and water mix. Nice messy job this. Rolling it up, then laying it onto the foam. Again, I'm going to do this really quickly so that you don't have to be bored to death. You can do long pieces or short pieces, it does make no difference whatsoever, but literally layering it on, squishing them up a little bit. It really is so simple. There's no rocket science involved in anything that I'm doing here. Like I say, if it was difficult, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I'm not all that clever, but there you go. This gives you an idea. The little layers of the rocks. And when it's done, you can go back if you wanted to. If while it's still wet, you can always go back to your knife and add a few more lines into there, a few more ridges. Okay. Then when it's dry, you end up with something like this. Okay, so alright, let's tidy this up a bit and then we talk about the clay work. Okay, so that covers really the construction of the foam parts. Now, let's look at the clay section. Now, the clay work, that was basically the arches are built on top of a layer of foam to give it the right height that I needed to get level with the track. I then put a layer of plaster over that. I did try and make some rock shapes out of plaster, but I kind of fell out of love with that pretty fast. Hence, I went and got some air dry clay and I pressed that straight onto the plaster. Okay, now the plaster gave that foam a decent bit of strength to push against, so I could really get in there and mould the clay to how I wanted it to look. One thing to bear in mind, the clay will crack as it dries out, so you may have to go around the next day, for example, and just patch it up here and there. Once the clay was on, I basically scored some lines into it, nothing too spectacular, just using a little knife. I left it for one day, went out the following morning. The clay hadn't dried totally, but it was quite hard. But the outer part was still, you can still manoeuvre it. So I got a plastic spatula and pushed downwards over and over again to try and close the gaps that I've made with the modelling knife. And this gave this really nice rocky kind of pattern, which I thought looked really, really nice. And then smoothed off the top part of it to make it look like, once the grass was on there, like an overhang, if you like. And I think the overall effect was really, really nice. It gave like a layered rock effect. And then again, once painted, probably my favourite part of the railway so far. I think it looks really, really nice. And it's actually the scale part of it. It looks like it's in proportion. The clay wasn't expensive, probably about £2.50 for a great big block. It does go quite a long way. But like I say, with the clay, you can mould it a little bit neater to how you want it to be, rather than the foam. You are kind of second guessing where that knife's going to go and how much it's going to flick out each time. So you can control the detail more with the clay. Okay, so that's really the construction side of the rock faces done. We've gone through the 3 different methods using the foam and the one using the clay. Okay, now I'm very aware of the clock ticking by here. We're up to about 15 minutes or so, and I need to go and get the lawn mowed before Mrs. Chedworth gets in from work, or I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. Okay, so I think what we're going to do, we're going to cut this into 2 separate episodes, 2 separate parts. Got the construction, and then next time round we'll go and look at the painting process and the static grass and that sort of thing. Okay, so we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very, very much for joining me once again in the shed. You have no idea how much it makes me happy knowing you guys come along from time to time. And also thank you to everybody who joined in the live stream at the weekend. It was something I haven't done for over a year, and I'm totally out of practice and a little bit kind of fumbled and mumbled and gumbled. Also, I'd just like to say I'd like to apologise for the way we ended the live stream. Okay, the night, it was quite abrupt. Something had appeared in the comments which I was unaware of. It wasn't a problem with the stream or anyone in the stream or anything to do with anything like that. It was more of a different matter. I won't go into it on the channel here right now because I don't feel it's not the right place or the time. Okay, but something appeared in the comments which kind of got me emotionally perhaps a bit weak, shall we say it. I didn't know how to deal with that at the time. Something that's very close to my heart, and we just had to end. Evie could see I wasn't going to finish that very, very quickly, so she kind of was nudging me and trying to say, look, we'll finish it here. And so apologies for ending it so quickly, but thank you for everyone who joined us for that. It was really, really special evening. We really enjoyed ourselves. We might do one again, who knows, I don't know. But if we do one, it'll be certainly a bit more planned than what we did the other night. So, but yeah, thank you very, very much for joining us. Really appreciate the continued support. And I'll see you in part 2 of this particular journey of building some rock faces. Thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you soon. Thank you.